Hello, everyone, and very welcome to the third episode of Chain Talk. Today's episode is all about blockchain in oil and gas industry. I have this special feeling for oil and gas industry, and that is because it's the industry I have started my professional career with. I was a scholar by Petronas, amazing Petronas, and then continued working with Schlumberger as a field engineer in oil and gas industry. So I always have this feeling of, I always follow up. Even though I left that industry, I always follow up on how technology is changing things in that industry and all. And when we had the chat with Alasitar Caithness, who is our guest of honor for this episode, I was like, you should come on Chain Talk. You should really let everyone in this industry know how this amazing technology, this is what I think is going to change things in this industry. So I'm not going to talk more, and I'm going to ask Alasitar to introduce himself, and then we'll start with it.
Okay, right, well, thanks very much then, Zara. My name's Alasitar Caithness. I'm the CEO of Ziyen Energy. We last year launched Ziyen Coin, where we tokenize the equity of Ziyen Inc., and that's currently on the blockchain as well. So
that's amazing. So, Alasitar, we're going to hear a lot more about Ziyen Coin and your solution in this industry. But before we go ahead, I'm sure we have quite a number of audience who are from that industry, or maybe not. But before we go deep, I want them to understand, at least have a basic understanding of what blockchain technology is about. And it's a tradition that we start with asking our guests to give us a one-sentence definition of blockchain technology. How would you put blockchain in one sentence?
Yeah, it's like, that's the most difficult question of them all, actually. So it's how do you put something like this in one sentence? But I think for most people who don't understand blockchain, I think it's going to have a profound effect on society in the same way the internet had a profound effect on society 30 years ago. So the way I look about blockchain is that when the internet first started, we started with email. And 30 years later, we've got 1 million use cases of it. So really, blockchain came actually out from the roots of Bitcoin. So when Bitcoin actually operates on the blockchain, so what's happening now is we've just got different use cases on the blockchain as well. So if people think about it like that, then these are just new use cases coming onto the blockchain, and 30 years from now, who knows what the world's going to be doing. But it'll have the same profound effect on our society, and I think this technology that's come along called the blockchain will change our society in so many ways.
I don't consider that as one sentence, but it's okay. We can take that as one sentence.
One sentence, long one.
Yeah, and then how would you elaborate that to one paragraph if I ask you then next?
Yeah, so it's one paragraph. So I think looking at what we are doing on the blockchain itself, so like delving a bit into the sort of oil and gas side of things, essentially what we are doing is when we say we're tokenizing oil, we're not actually tokenizing the product oil. It's the financial structure of this. So what you'll find with a lot of stuff in the blockchain is we're actually working with financial structures. So I always think when I speak to accountants about this is most accountants could never understand Bitcoin because it's an asset that's not backed against anything. What we are doing with Ziyen Coin is it's an asset-backed token, but we're actually using the same technology, but we're backing it against the assets of an oil and gas asset, and also the distributions in terms of the sale of oil as well through the blockchain. So this is how we are sort of developing that whole concept.
Mm-hmm. And can you just tell us a little bit more on how you are involved with that and what actually Ziyen Coin project is all about?
So basically, we're looking. So historically, if you look at the way the financial structures of an oil-producing asset or energy-producing asset has been set up, the way you actually hold the interests in this asset haven't changed for over the last 100 years. So if you think of the way the technology is developed in oil and gas, it's it's changing every day, and new technologies allowing us to drill deeper, acquire oil we've not been able to get before. When they started to do directional drilling, and then they moved into shale gas, and there's been so many developments in the oil and gas sector that's taken the industry forward. But the way the structure of these deals are in place and the way that people hold interests in this. So just to give you an example, if you went back to some of the assets that we own out in the Midwest in America. So if you think of an oil producing asset out in Kentucky, so what happens is the operator would own, say, 50% of the project. 10% will be owned by the landowner, or 15% of the landowner, which is quite often the farmer, and then 35 to 40% is actually held in small working interests. Now, this is where people invest into this project. So you might invest $50,000 and it might give you 2% of this project. And what will happen is every month as they produce oil, depends how much oil they sell to the refining company. It depends on the oil price for that day. And you'll get a return in distributions based on how much oil is actually being sold. So the problem that's actually happening is, now this can go for, say, 15, 20, 30 years, you will be getting distributions based on holding on to this asset. The real problem is if you ever want to sell this asset, how do you actually do it? So there's two major problems. There's one is, what's the value of this asset at any given time based on it's been producing oil, it's past peak production, so it might be producing 500 barrels a day to begin with for the first year, then it drops down to 300 barrels a day, and then the oil price moves up and down. So the first problem is what's the value of the asset? The second problem is you need to find someone in the world who wants to buy your 1% of this asset. So what we're actually doing is we're taking the asset and we're dropping it into an SPV, which is a special purpose vehicle, and then we're tokenizing the special purpose vehicle. So when we're actually tokenizing the asset, we're not actually tokenizing oil, we're tokenizing the financial asset.
That was the question I was going to ask you.
All right, okay. So when we're tokenizing the financial assets, so what's actually happened now, this could be scaled out all the way across the entire industry. So you're looking at some of the big projects. You're based in Sweden. I'm originally from Scotland. But you look at some of the big projects in the North Sea where companies like Shell and BP and Equinor are the traditional big producers that are there. They've sold assets past peak production to smaller operators, the likes of Apache, and different players that come into the market space. But again, they have that same problem. They've got to sell the asset as a whole. So what we're doing is we are taking this asset, splitting it up into tokens, and then we've created a platform where people can actually sell those tokens. So coming back to the project in Kentucky, if you have 2% of this producing asset, rather than having 2%, now you might own 20,000 Titan tokens. So rather than having this, so we don't envisage it changing the oil and gas industry in terms of the way people want to hold on to this asset, the way they're investing in it because they want distributions. All we're doing is providing this secondary layer of liquidity, whereby now, through our platform, you can actually sell your working interest under tokenization. And originally, we've set this up doing tokenizing our own projects, but now we've developed the platform that's going through beta testing, and we're looking to bring on projects onto the platform now, and we're providing this level of liquidity, and everything we're doing is SEC regulated through security tokens.
Mm-hmm. And when do you think this solution will be out in the market?
I would say it'll be out within the next 8 weeks.
Okay.
So we've already done it once. We've already beta testing. We can already tokenize projects. What we're doing now is a sort of redesign, rebrand of the platform itself, and then make it, rather than from a technical perspective, now we're making it more sort of user friendly, so we can start bringing in the general public and more investors to come into this. But what it really does do when you start thinking about it is, in the oil and gas industry, the people that invest has been a very, very small number. you're a very small number of people getting rich. By actually changing this, whereby, in the past you need $50,000 to come into this. Once we tokenize the projects, we're going to set it up that minimum investment into these projects will be $500. Or so anyone out there who might want to start building up portfolio of assets that provide them distributions, then we've set up this mechanism. So what we think is going to happen is we're going to open and we're not just doing it oil and gas, we're doing it all across all energy sectors, so we're making it agnostic as well. So we're opening up this opportunity for people to invest in energy producing assets, whereby they'll be able to take money, invest in energy producing assets, and these energy producing assets will give them distributions, whether that's quarterly or 6 monthly, it might be annually, depending on each operator, and it'll essentially hold their value, and they'll be able to sell and buy these tokens.
Great. And why Ziyen coin? What was the gap in the market that you saw that you were like, okay, I should go after this?
It was really just sort of working through the process. So initially when we looked at this, we looked at other ideas in terms of developing this. So, one of our partners was one of the founders of Oilcoin. So Oilcoin was originally developed to provide an underlying coin for the oil and gas industry, whereby, rather than executing transactions in dollars, you would execute transactions in this oil coin. It was benchmarked against barrels of oil. But the problem with that concept it wasn't that these guys aren't really smart in what they've done. If you ever read the white paper of it, it's really well written, and the concept is good. You just couldn't get adoption from the major operators. So what we started to look at was, well, we know the blockchain technology is good. We know it's going to change the oil industry. Just the first solution that was coming out there was maybe not the solution that we can actually take to market. So then we started to look at the smaller oil projects out in the Midwest and essentially the non-operated interest side of things. So when we're actually doing this, we don't want to be an operator anymore. What we're doing is creating the platform. Ziyen coin will own a percentage of every single project on the platform. We'll tokenize every single project on the platform. We'll create tokens for all the individual operators on a project-by-project basis. And then we'll provide the liquidity for the non-op interest. And that was really how it started, was the ability where money has been stuck. So this is what the blockchain is going to do. When people talk about liquidity, it's going to allow people where they've got locked finance for this money to now be able to be tradable through tokens. Mm-hmm. And these tokens, so I use the word token. Everyone's using the word token rather than coin. So when it originally came along, it was Bitcoin, the first one, then there was all the other coins. What you'll find is everybody's using the word token now instead, So at the time, I didn't really want to call it Ziyen token, even though we're tokenizing it, because, even calling it Ziyen coin, people thought I was making this stuff up. So if I suddenly started calling it Ziyen token, they would have thought, what's this guy, what's he talking about? But really, realistically, everything's coming along in terms of tokenization. So what Ziyen coin represent is we actually tokenize the equity of Ziyen Inc. and Ziyen Energy. So we had interests in about 18, or we've got interest now in 21 projects across America. These are small projects. Initially, we were acquiring leases and we were tokenizing them. Then we started to do small operations, and then we looked to start to tokenize that. And then we started to go into this, wait a minute, why don't we create a platform and tokenize other projects? And then essentially what Ziyen coin is the Amazon of the whole thing, whereby we won't be the operator. And in I always use that as a sort of example for people because everybody understands Amazon. Before Amazon came out, if you told the entire world, by the way, I'm creating a website to sell your t-shirts, even though you sell the t-shirts on your own website and want 8% of the profits, everyone's going, there's no way I'm going to do that. And now everybody who sells any product, especially under the coronavirus, most businesses are going bankrupt, they're going under, and then Amazon's profits have gone up 12% because everybody's using this mechanism, Exactly. So if you think about what we're doing is it moves away from the valuation of Ziyen Inc. and the valuation of Ziyen coin in every single project, because now essentially, because it's agnostic, we can actually take any project on there, we'll tokenize the project, we'll do all the legal requirements. So, you know, our partners who are involved in the project, it's just not Ziyen Energy, you know, they're, you know, 25-year, 30-year SEC veteran attorneys who specialized in tokenization. Everything we're doing is very regulated. It's covered by all the sort of traditional SEC rules. So this is barriers to entry for anyone coming in. So the strange thing is, when we started this, I was thinking the whole crypto world and the Bitcoin people would be loving what we're doing. But to a certain extent, the majority of them don't even understand what we're doing, because when I talk about, you know, SEC Rule 144, you've got to hold on to the tokens for 12 months prior to selling them. You know, what are you actually talking about? You know, it's like stuff like that. So what you're finding with the security tokens that are getting set up here, they're all covered by the same traditional SEC rules. It's just that they've moved to token format from shares, you know?
And how is your solution different from the traditions?
Well, the tradition is it was just in shares, so they couldn't basically see. So the problem with the traditional way of doing this is the asset wasn't broken down into fractional levels. So you've got to think about, so these tokens are like fractional shares, you know? So what it does do is it fractionalizes it. So by fractionalizing it, what it does is it allows this opportunity for more people to get into the market space. And then by tokenizing it, and having a platform to trade these tokens, suddenly, you know, because if you've got 2% of this asset in Kentucky, you know, the best person you can actually sell your working interest to is other people in the project who've got non-op working interests. So if I wanted to sell my 2% of a project in Kentucky, I'd phone up the operator and say, listen, I'm trying to get out of this. Is there anyone else you think would want to buy it? Because who am I? You know, who else would I know to buy it? And then they would go to the other non-op interest operators to see if they want to buy it. Whereby under this solution, you can essentially go onto a platform and sell your working interest in tokens. You know, straight away you can put the offer, someone can buy it, and you can buy and sell it.
For the next question, I need to have to ask you first, who will be your typical customer?
So the typical customer for this will continue to be people who invest in energy assets, you know?
And how about the oil and gas operating companies?
So, for you, all right, so your two customers. Yeah. So to begin with, I was thinking about people who are going to buy and sell the non-op interests, but the people who tokenize the project will be the oil operators. So the ones you'll look at to begin with will be small to medium-sized oil operators, but we've already had a lot of interest from bigger operators as well. I just think the model can be scaled out. So to begin with, the smaller companies are going to want to do this. Now, you might think, well, why would they want to do this with us? Well, it just allows them this liquidity as well. So, you know, if people invest into their oil projects, essentially it allows them to basically raise capital faster. It'll allow anybody who invests in this project this level of liquidity after holding on to the tokens for 12 months. So right now, you're getting people to invest in the oil project, and then they're holding on for the life cycle of the project. So the only way they can really sell out is if the operator actually gets bought out. So if the operator gets bought out, and then everyone's got small working interest, usually their working interests get bought with this. But under this system, what we'll do is we're providing liquidity straight away for these smaller operators. So what that does is it suddenly opens up the potential investors to come into this. Because right now, you're going from very, very niche people looking to invest. And then by opening it, I think the first people who will start to invest are people who actually work in the oil industry themselves. So the millions of people who work in the oil industry don't normally own interests in oil producing assets. You know, people think they do, but they don't. You might own shares in a company like Shell or BP or Schlumberger, but do you get the returns to invest in oil projects? And then in drilling projects, you know, when the oil price was at $40, $50 a barrel, if some of these projects hit, people are getting a return anywhere between 20 to 50 times their money. So if and if you're getting the ability to have this as a tax write-off, you've got large amounts of money in here that if it actually hits from drilling project to production, and you can get a big return in it. And then what happens is, these operators have made their investors money, so when they go into the next project, they usually stick with them, and it sort of circulates like that. They're obviously always looking for new investors, but that's the way it sort of operates. But under this system, whereby suddenly you can buy smaller interests, you can buy $500 in this project, $1,000 in that project, $800 in this project. You're essentially buying into assets that give you distributions over time.
And then in a way distributing the risk.
Distributing the risk, but it opens up the door for, potentially millions of people to come in and start investing, especially people who work in the industry themselves, because suddenly, they'll have quite a good knowledge in that, especially geologists, people involved in surveys. They're working for big oil companies. Suddenly they think, well, I'm making quite good money. I can invest in things. I'm always looking to invest in that. I can invest in this project. The ability to invest in the project, but also be able to take your money out once it's in production is what people want. People don't really want to invest in something where the money's locked.
Exactly. I'm just going to ask you this question because I want you to come to it directly. Imagine if I will be representing a potential customer for your solution. What would be the advantages of using your solution?
So I think the two big advantages for an operator coming into our solution is, one, it's the ability to raise capital, because suddenly it's like you're limited to who you're actually able to go out and raise capital. You've got to raise it all for yourself. Suddenly you're taking your project, we're tokenizing this project, and we're opening it up to millions of people to invest in your project. So that's the first one. That's this. The second one is this level of liquidity. So you're the operator, you own 50% of the project. If you're an operator in the North Sea, or you're an operator in other parts of the world, one of the biggest problems is once it goes past peak production, this ability to sell the project on. Now that that life cycle for bigger oil companies to move on a project can take anywhere up to 3 years, whereby under our solution, they can sell it off in small increments. So they've got this capability, whether they want to sell it or not, is, the operator can go on and sell their tokens on the platform as well. So they've got this ability to sell the tokens as well. So it's just providing liquidity to them. And then you start to think what will happen is, if more and more people start using this platform for tokenizing the project and selling liquidity, then essentially all the investors are going to want to have this ability to have liquidity as well. And if I came along and said, well, I'm doing one out with the project, and they would ask the question, how do I sell this in 12 months time? Well, they can. It's just going back to the original one. Well, you've got to wait till we sell the project. Why do you want to sell it? We could ask other people with working interest to sell it. But under our system, what you're able to do is that liquidity is there straight away.
So let's imagine small, medium-sized operators are typically the best customers for now, at least now for Ziyen. And what would be the challenges for these companies to adopt this solution?
Well, we do everything for them. So essentially, we do all the legal structure. So we've been working on this for a year. But a lot of that is doing the legal compliance side of things. So, we've got everything legally compliant. So all they're really doing is they're coming along to us with, this is our oil producing asset. And then we tokenize it for them. We set it up for them. We basically generate the token or so we would create like Titan oil token. That's one of our customers is coming on from a company. And then we create the token. And then when they sell the token, they would get the money that's put in there. In terms of the distributions, we're working with a company that's basically operating as the transfer agent. They'll be paying the distributions as well. We are set up to work with the exchange, who will be able to allow people to convert these tokens to either cryptocurrency or fiat currency. So fiat currency, a lot of people don't understand what fiat currency is. They quite often, when they see it written, they think it's flat currency. anyone else out there, fiat currency is like the US dollar, the UK pound, the euro, etc. So the system's in place for you to do this conversion. And really, we're doing absolutely everything on behalf of the customer, because these customers aren't going to know what we're talking about. So we're making the solution as easy as possible for them. So we're essentially become their partner in the tokenization piece of it, and they don't actually have to worry about that side of things, because we're setting everything up. So when the tokens get sold, they automatically receive the money. In order to pay the...
So they are not really involved with anything. It's basically you doing all the job.
Yeah, we do absolutely everything for them.
What were the challenges that you had for developing this solution?
A lot to do with it is just the compliance piece of it. And then it's plugging in all the different sort of softwares in place to do the sort of analysis side of things. So, one of the things that we're doing is we're using sort of AI. We're using high-end software. Our first partner who's involved in this, Petrovisor, they actually do well data analysis on around about, I think it's 30,000 wells already. So they've got clients like ADNOC. They're already doing well data analysis. So they're basically, so they know how much oil is getting produced on each well. They do analysis on it. They do workover candidates in which well to increase production. So they're already using this software, and they're working in basins all across America, as well as they're working abroad there as well. So they're one of our software partners. We're speaking to other software partners. So the way we're designed the system is that we'll be able to work with the best oil and gas software available on the market space, and going into other industry sectors to do the analysis piece of it. So the way it actually works is, when we originally did the beta testing, we're going to sort of develop our own blockchain to run it on from the data analysis side of things, but we're going to use an Amazon web server blockchain now. So essentially Amazon are doing all the blockchains. So I think this is the other thing that people don't realize. When we first started doing this, a lot of it was sort of customized blockchain, but in going forward, all the blockchains are going to be developed by Amazon, IBM, Microsoft. So all the major software partners are now in this. So when people start to think about, we're already using the blockchain in so many ways, as throughout our daily life. People just don't realize they're actually using it. So people seem to, I don't understand how this works. You don't understand how the internet works. Explain to me in 100 words how the internet works. Well, I don't know how it works, but I know whether I'm getting good Wi-Fi or not, because I need it to just do my thing. This is the same technology. So it will get fast-tracked in the next 5 years, because all the major software companies are doing this. So essentially, coming back to what we are doing is, we are using Amazon because they're basically developing, essentially, I think, one of the best blockchains for scalability now. So we'll hold all the data, all the information, that'll all be logged in the blockchain. We'll move into the tokenization piece that will tokenize the asset. We've got the partners who will pay the distributions to the token holders. They're also a transfer agent, which will be all SEC regulated. And then we're partnering with one of the exchanges, where this is where they're going to be able to essentially sell these tokens on. So, we've just been working through the process with all the right partners to get it. So it's the point that we've beta tested it. Now we'll just take it to market space.
Having said all of this, do you believe blockchain is going to revolutionize oil and gas industry?
Yeah, 100%. The oil and gas industry it's just already so I spoke on one of the big blockchain events. I was on stage with the key blockchain guys from Shell, Equinor, and Saudi Aramco. And these companies are already spending huge amounts of money in the blockchain. So what they're doing is they're developing smart contracts to execute transactions for projects. Now, you might think, well, how does a smart contract work? Well, if you think about it, it's going to remove back-end invoicing. And then people think, well, how does that work? Well, you agree that once this goods is delivered on site, you'll automatically be paid. There won't be a 30, 60, 90-day sort of wait period. You've got to send invoicing, chase invoices, all that. They're going to remove all of this, because the smart contracts design front end, and because you're tracking these goods as they get moved along blockchain. In the same way you've ordered an Amazon package, we're all home now because of coronavirus. You went into Amazon, I'm waiting for my package, it's supposed to come Thursday, I got an alert, it's left. And you can go in and track this package of where it's actually moving along until it comes into your house. It's the same with all goods that are getting delivered on projects as well. So you're tracking this item, whether it's cable, whether it's valves, whatever the product is. And once it gets delivered on site, the smart contract's finally executed and you'll automatically be paid. Now people think, well, how's that going to completely change things? But the big oil operators, I sat on stage with them and they reckon they're going to save anywhere between 8 and 12% of fixed costs. Now you've gone to an oil price of $25 a barrel. Now, it's not going to say 25 to 30 forever. It's probably going to go back to maybe a level of $40 once, Saudi Arabia and Russia bankrupt the US oil industry.
Mm-hmm.
No, but they'll push it back up with production. But really what will happen is it will be at that level. So these companies, they're no longer going to get the $100 oil price like they had before, unless there's some sort of water in the Middle East that's going to stop this. But really what you've seen now is the oil industry having to change. So now even more so than ever, technology to reduce fixed costs are going to be what they're focusing on. Saudi Aramco has invested $800 million developing their blockchain technology. So back to what I was saying, they're looking to save 8 to 12% of fixed costs. But if you're a company that makes $500 billion and you think you can save 8% of your fixed costs, you're going to have every single accountant working in the company delighted with this. So what does that mean? It means the entire invoicing department and all that back-end cost is going to be removed. So you go to these smart contract events, they all go around with little badges with no invoicing because they know the technology to remove invoicing is gone. And it's actually going to roll out across the world. So in 15 years from now, you'll probably never get an invoice again. Now, people who write invoices and think about that, they think, oh, how am I going to get paid? But really, you've made the decision up front. You'll get paid the minute you finish the job, instantaneously. There won't be this delay. And if, 8% of fixed costs in a company that makes $500 billion is huge savings. That's why these guys are getting so excited about it. The stuff that I'm talking about, when I speak to the bigger operators about it, especially as a guy, Karn Sood, who's Shell's key blockchain guy out of Houston. If you meet Karn, you think you've met some guy from sort of software company Silicon Valley, He's like that sort of type of guy, Bill Gates type guy. Last thing you expect is a sort of oil guy when you see him, etc. But the oil industry is going that way because they see these are the guys with the knowledge and the technology to drive the business forward. So everything is going to get automated. The cost is going to get lower and lower. And the blockchain is just a facility to just basically use this technology to drive the cost down.
Mm-hmm. I've worked in oil and gas industry. And then when I moved to IT and then I had clients from different industries since then, from construction to supply chain, logistic, and food and beverages, that you had to provide services for them. And if I want to make a comparison, I would say oil and gas industry is a quite advanced industry in technology compared to many other industries. Let's say compared to construction. I would say construction is still quite conservative compared to oil and gas. But I said that to come to the point that to what extent do you think this advancement in technology and this digitalization, digital transformation that has gone forward is going to help or hamper adoption of a technology like blockchain?
Adoption is the most difficult thing. It's just like, because people are always afraid of change. It just, unless you get enforced change, even now, you think, look at just the coronavirus. We'll just speak about it because we're all locked in. So the coronavirus comes in, the government say, this, you're spreading it as, come in contact with people, do social distancing. We've closed all the restaurants, we've closed all the nightclubs, we've closed all the, gyms. But then you look at the beach out in California and there's 3,000 people on the beach. So it's like, in a way, it's like we're getting forced to change. We're watching people die every day in the news, but you go to the parks in London, Regent Park, 3,000 people in the park. It's like, it's even with that change, we still can't stop it, because then everyone goes, oh, well, this guy's stupid there as well. What's he going to do? He has to come out. You're bouncing off the walls, especially if you stay in a big city and you've got a small apartment. I'm getting out. No, everyone else is getting out. They're out, I'm out. So I'm not going back in. So that mentality comes to it, and it's management of change. I always remember Bob Gammy was my old professor at Robert Gordon's. We did the subject management of change, and he said, the problem when change meets culture, culture always wins, unless the technology actually drives it through. But it's one of these things that will be top-down driven for the major oil operators coming there. They'll one day say, we're basically running a project on the blockchain using smart contracts. So everyone in the supply chain is going to have to either fill in the smart contract or you're not going to get to bid. And that's how it's going to start to come across there as well. I just think with the technology that's coming out there, it'll just take time to get adoption, but it's already getting adopted. What you'll find, I think, that because of what's happened right now, change will speed up. We're used to change anyway. So because of the lower oil price and because of what's happened to the industry, maybe blockchain will get fast-tracked because the savings can be seen that's faster. So it's like no longer it's like maybe we should start using the blockchain. These guys are talking about saving 8% fixed costs. That's our profit margin going forward. Our profit margin was when the oil price went to $50. It's not going to $50 anymore. Our profit margin is we've got to strip the fixed costs out to make money. Yeah, let's start to fast track this technology. Let's put more resources into it. Let's rather make it a pilot program, because I've got a friend, she works for Ernst & Young and based out of Houston, and a really clever lady, and she said the problem with, and she's involved in a lot of the blockchain stuff with the major operators from Houston, because Houston's a hub for it, and then because obviously Ernst & Young's involved in that. But she said they've got a runway of anywhere between 18 months to 36 months for any pilot project to get put into practice. Wow. But, I haven't spoken to her since the real coronavirus kicked in, but, I've been reading about it. Projects like this will start to get fast-tracked, because it's like, okay, we've got it working in a small scale, let's start rolling it out. Why? Because our share prices collapse, the oil prices collapse, we're laying people off left, right, and center, we're not producing the oil. We might as well do it right now. The technology's in place. So what you might find is in the next 18 months to 2 years, blockchain gets fast-tracked across the world because of this cost-saving side of things. And then because we start saving costs, we start looking at this other technology. Because one of the things that obviously we were looking at with the blockchain was to move away from just being oil and gas, to make our platform any energy tokenization of an energy producing asset, so we could do the same technology with a coal plant, with a nuclear plant. But the big thing that we're focusing on is renewable energy, is the ability for us to tokenize renewable energy, like a wind farm and a solar farm, and allow people to invest in the energy themselves. So when we did the first oil and gas things, and what we're finding is obviously because of what's happened with the oil price, we think we're going to get a lot more operators using our system because it's going to save them costs and get this ability to get liquidity. But we think then going forward now that, we're potentially going to be putting on hundreds of renewable energy projects and tokenizing them, and we'll speed up this transition in energy through tokenization. Because to me, the blockchain is the catalyst to speed up the transition in energy. People think, well, how can do that? But I believe it is. So, once we tokenize the first wind farm, so people say, well, how are you going to tokenize the wind farm? Well, we're going to do it under the same model. What we're going to do is we're going to take the asset, we're going to sit it up there. So right now, if you want to invest in renewable energy, you can invest in a company that makes a renewable energy product and hope that becomes successful. You can invest in someone like Tesla, who shares trade in the stock market. You can buy and sell that. But you can't invest in the renewable energy source in the same way I'm talking about investing in oil at the beginning of the interview. So what would happen now is you would buy, say, 10,000 Titan wind tokens. So now we've got Titan wind tokens and Titan solar tokens. So Charlie Neely, who runs Titan Oil Company and Oil Pipeline, he's actually looking to do a solar project in Kentucky as well. So you'll soon be able to buy Titan solar tokens. Now what will happen then is you'll go out and take your investment into solar tokens. Now what will happen is this will give you distributions as they start to sell electricity. So you'll essentially be investing in the energy source themselves. So what we are doing is creating a model that's allowing this, essentially this ability to invest in the energy source. Because right now, if you ask anyone, how do I invest in renewable energy? There is no retail investment for people like you and I to invest in this. Yeah, if you're a pension fund, you're looking to deploy capital for millions of dollars. Yeah, if you give us $50 million, you can have a percentage of this wind farm. But right now, it's nearly impossible. So what we're doing under this model is by us tokenizing it. Now, why would the renewable energy developers do that? Because suddenly, if 10%, 15% of their project can be funded from sort of retail investors who want to buy small incremental tokens, suddenly you could have thousands of people investing money into renewable energy projects. The one thing with renewable energy is they've been trying to compare it like for returns with oil and gas, because they want oil and gas people to do this. But you're never going to get the same returns as investing in a drilling project that hits oil as you would in renewable energy. But once you understand that the model's different, what you'll be able to understand is that you're going to get distributions over time. So you've now invested in a wind farm now that through tokens. So you've got these Titan wind tokens. So you own the Titan wind tokens, and then every quarter, as they sell electricity, it starts to give you distributions. So you've now got an asset that gives you distributions, and it's also a good place to put your money, because it's not really going to lose value. If anything, it might increase in value as the scope of the project there. These could produce electricity for the next 25, 30 years. And then if it's a place that's always windy, then even when they come in and upgrade the infrastructure, because you still own part of the asset, you'll get returns on this. And then essentially what you're doing is investing in a long-term asset that gives you distributions. But it has to be different. You can't compare it like for like. And what our platform allows you to do as well, and what we were originally very excited about, and I still think it's key, is we're basically got an energy trading platform. So if we've got an oil project that's giving people distributions based on their oil tokens, you'll be able to take the distributions and profits from this, and you'll be able to invest it directly into renewable energy. So we're taking the profits from oil and gas, the profits from coal, the profit from nuclear. Once it's tokenized, we're creating a platform for people to put this directly into renewable energy projects. So this is how we believe that Caithness will speed the whole thing up.
So basically, Ziyen Coin is going to change the investment market of the energy industry. Let's not say only oil and gas industry.
Yeah. I think if it's as successful like we believe, in 50 years from now, it'll be a completely different thing. It'll be an investment process for energy projects.
But what do you think? What do you think is the current status of adoption of blockchain in oil and gas industry?
I think it's definitely just all pilot projects. I think our idea of what we're doing is so revolutionary to the market space that, I've got so many followers from the bigger oil companies that follow us. As we start to do more and more interviews with this, we've done a white paper with researchers from the World Bank and researchers from the University of Florida, and that's been approved for all the financial journals. So in going forward as well, you've got people like the World Bank writing about what we're doing. It doesn't mean that because the researchers work on multiple papers, but it's credible to the point. And as people start to read our white paper, they'll see that this is the 2 years of us working with this evolution. What's interesting when you read that white paper, it's a third person's party or third party's perspective of what we're doing from a financial perspective. So we're like the case study of what's going on.
Yeah, exactly.
There's other universities now contacting us and reaching out to us as well. So what you're finding is there's different universities. So it's essentially what we're doing is as an asset-backed cryptocurrency. And this asset is energy-backed cryptocurrency. So we're using the technology from Bitcoin and we're applying, and people can understand Bitcoin, especially financial people, because it's not backed against anything. What we're doing is using the same technology, but we're backing it against energy assets and energy asset distributions. And everything I've been talking about is essentially just the process in place. So people are going to be able to understand this easier than they're going to be able to understand Bitcoin. Because they're going to understand that, wait a minute, well, I understand the oil industry, and all he's talking about is fractionalizing it and creating a platform to trade these energy tokens.
Yeah. But what do you think are the obstacles for blockchain projects to stay at the, for not having that many robust use cases of blockchain in oil and gas industry? Why are they all still in pilot?
It was just like my friend who works in Ernst & Young. It's just like the big operators are, they're massive companies. They're, your Shell, your BP, your ExxonMobil. These guys turn over anywhere between $300 to $500 billion. They've got share price to protect. Well, they've all collapsed right now, but it's just like, that's why things will get fast tracked. But essentially, they've got a business that's successful anyway. So when they want to implement something new, there's a sort of long runway for this to happen. Because they're not going to, it's not like Carn Sud and Shell and that can do what we do. Well, they probably can, but they can buy what we do. I was advised by these guys is, we like what you do. If it works, we're either going to use it or we're going to buy it, like everything else they do in the subsea industry. Half the subsea industry has been developed technology by smaller guys who've used to work in Schlumberger like you for 20 years, and seen there's a little gap in the market, set a product up, a widget up, developed it. Their customers became Schlumberger, Cameron, FMC, all the sort of subsea type companies out there. And then what happens is one of them decides, wait a minute, I need to use your product faster. I'll just buy you, Coming from Aberdeen in Scotland, they used to, I'm trying to think of the analogy they used there, but, I was going out to see oil and gas companies all the time. And, 1 week it would be a little independent company, next week you go there and it's Schlumberger, They're hoovering up so many guys.
Exactly. You just mentioned that you think this whole corona crisis is going to fasten up adoption of blockchain in oil and gas industry. With all the crisis that is happening and all the costs that they want to prevent and all the damage that they want to fix. So having said all of this, what do you think will be the driving wheels of adoption of blockchain technology in oil and gas industry?
Oh, it's driving costs down. It's like cost. It's cost. The advantage of blockchain is, initially, when you look at it, it's like we're looking at liquidity, but we're looking at this capability to make projects operate at lower costs. It's just going to be cost. But using this technology is going to drive the cost down. And I think that once they start to run these projects, on the blockchain, so it's like once you run an entire project using smart contracts and everything's set up, and the whole pilot project is running the blockchain. So one of the projects, it's the Oil Blockchain Consortium. They're based out of Houston. So that's the one where all the major operators are in there. So if you had a look to see who's actually part of that, it's like every major operator in the world's involved in this. And they all work together developing projects. So one of the projects they're working on as a pilot project is in the fracking industry. It's, they pump a lot of sort of water into, maybe you wouldn't say toxic water, but water with chemicals to release the gas in the projects. So what do you do to remove this water? So there's obviously been a problem in the past whereby a lot of this water gets dumped. especially on land projects in the US, whereby rather than taking to the facility to just get rid of it, they just get dumped at fields and things like that as well. So what they've found with just this initial project is not only have from an environmental piece, whereby now they're tracking this as they go. So no longer are they just taking huge tanker trucks with half-filled tankers of water. They're waiting for the whole thing to be full. So they're tracking there. So they're saving costs. They're only getting paid once the tanker actually distributes the water to the right facility. So they're tracking this all the way along. And once it gets, they're distributing the water to the right facility and doing it in an environmental way, the customer or the company that actually removes the water, they're getting paid. So those are just three little actions, but they've already seen cost savings of like 8 to 10%. And then from an environmental perspective, that's improving as well. So that's two just ticks from one aspect of something that people don't even think about in the oil and gas industry, So you start going through every single piece of the supply chain, as they apply blockchain technology, there's going to be improvements on it. And then every single tiny improvement across the entire supply chain, and you're talking about millions of products and services, I just think the whole thing will just get fast-tracked based on cost. And as people come in, it's like what's happening right now is we've got to adopt new ideas faster in order to basically move the world forward. So once we come out of coronavirus or COVID-19, the world's going to change anyway. The way we operate is going to change. So technologies like the blockchain will end up getting fast-tracked because this new world that we're going to be living in 18 months from now is going to want this technology more.
Yeah. And for the last question, I want you to describe a future of oil and gas industry with and without blockchain.
Well, I just think the oil and gas industry...
This is a fairy tale question, but I just wanted to ask it.
To tell you, I think, and this is, see, people talk about fossil fuels as bad and green energy is good, and it's just like, this is perception of most people there. They don't realize is, if we didn't have petroleum products right now to make the hand sanitizer, to make the ventilators, this is all refined plastic. It's like, come on, people, you've got to understand that if you listed everything they're using for coronavirus from a medical perspective right now, that's nearly all of it has come from oil. So what we're going to do, get rid of oil? We're never going to get rid of oil, So the big oil operators are becoming energy companies. So they're now moving into the energy industry. So in order for us to move to this new green world, the blockchain's the catalyst to speed this whole thing up. So people like BP, people like Repsol, people like ExxonMobil, people like Chevron, everybody looks at this guy as the bad guy, but this is the guy that's going to speed up this transition in energy. And the cost of energy that we have to live off is going to get cheaper. And then these guys are investing into renewable energy. They don't even want to, they're all dropping the word oil. Look at Statoil in Norway. They changed their name to Equinor. The first time I saw Equinor, I thought, who are those guys? Then I saw their production. I thought, I've never even heard of those guys. But they wanted to lose the word oil because they don't want to be associated just with oil. And they see the future as energy mix going forward. And to me, it's like, it's an energy mix that we're going to be using going forward. So I think the blockchain's the catalyst to speed up the transition in energy. And I think, people are talking about 2050. I think, and we're never going to get rid of oil for what we spoke about originally, just in the question in terms of all the product we get there. But we'll have a carbon neutral environment based on our ability to generate so much more energy cheaper from renewable energy as well. And to me, the blockchain's the linchpin of the whole thing. I've been talking about this for 2 years, and people think, what's the guy talking about? I'm telling you, it's just like everything I've spoken about today is the blockchain is the key for everything going forward. And in 30 years from now, when we all look back, we'll be more amazed with the technology the blockchain has done than we are right now with what the internet has done. And that's how much it's going to fast track the entire world.
Thank you so much, Alasitar. It was amazing having you on the show. And so if people want to reach out to you and ask you questions, I'm going to share all of your contacts here. And we're going to have you in 5 days on April 20th on a live session that people can just jump on and ask all the questions that they have from you. It was amazing having you on this session, and I wish you best of luck, and looking forward to see Ziyen Coin platform coming out soon.
Yeah, well, thanks very much, Zara. You take care, and thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
Okay, have
Bye.
a nice day.
Bye, everyone.